The most obvious objects of Jew hatred are the residents of Israel. The only country in the world whose right to exist is challenged and, as David Harris of the American Jewish Committee has noted, the only United Nations member state that has been targeted for annihilation by another United Nations member state, Iran. Iran has repeatedly called for the annihilation of Israel and has devoted great efforts to developing nuclear weapons that it hopes will eventually enable it to accomplish that goal. Unless anyone believes that Iran's antagonism is only against Israel and Zionism and therefore somehow not anti-Semitism, it has even sponsored conferences on Holocaust denial. Moreover, hatred for the Jews in the second decade of the 21st century is not at all confined to the Jews of Israel. Jew hatred in Europe, fueled by the rapid growth of radical Muslims in Europe, has so increased that The Atlantic featured a cover story in 2015 asking, "Is it time for the Jews to leave Europe?" Some of the statistics from that article: England. The Community Security Trust in England recorded 1,168 anti-Semitic incidents in 2014, by far the highest number ever recorded. A survey of British Jews revealed that more than half fear that Jews have no future in Great Britain. In May 2014, 4 people were shot to death by a French Muslim at the Jewish Museum in Brussels. A 2003 survey found that 74% of Dutch citizens felt Israel was the greatest threat to world peace, greater than Iran and North Korea. All this animosity in a country that was home to the Holocaust's most famous victim, Anne Frank. And in 2006, the Arab European League, a civil rights organization based in the Netherlands and Belgium, published a cartoon featuring a shirtless Hitler in bed with a frightened, dark-haired girl. Write this in your diary, Anne. Denmark. In 2015, a Jew guarding a Copenhagen synagogue where a bat mitzvah was taking place was murdered by a Danish-born Muslim. In the aftermath of a number of anti-Jewish incidents in Denmark, Rabbi Yair Melchior, head of the Danish Jewish community, told a reporter from Reuters, "It's not a dangerous anti-Semitism. It's spitting, cursing, things like that." A particularly sad declaration of what Melchior felt Jews who wanted to remain in Denmark need to learn to endure. At about the same time, a Danish imam urged Muslims to murder Jews. Sweden. In Malmö, Rabbi Schnur Kesselman, the only Jew in the city who dresses in an identifiably Jewish manner, kippah, long beard, has been the victim of over 100 attacks. People throwing bottles from their cars, Kesselman recalled in an interview with Jeffrey Goldberg, the author of the Atlantic cover story, and someone backing up their car in order to hit me. Kesselman and his wife do not venture out as a couple much, as some parents do not fly together for fear of being murdered and leaving their children orphans. Germany. In 2014, a synagogue in Wuppertal was firebombed by 2 Palestinian Germans. Arguably as bad, a German judge denied that the attack was an act of anti-Semitism, but rather ascribed it to a desire to bring attention to the Gaza conflict. France. France's 475,000 Jews constitute less than 1% of the country's population. Yet in 2014, according to the French Interior Ministry, Jews were the targets of 51% of all racist attacks in France. In Toulouse in 2012, a French Muslim attacked a Jewish school, killed a 30-year-old rabbi and his 2 sons, ages 3 and 6, and then chased down an 8-year-old Jewish girl and shot her to death. In January 2015, a French Muslim murdered 4 Jews at a kosher supermarket in Paris. A month earlier, Muslim robbers broke into a Jewish home demanding exorbitant sums of money, telling the occupants that they knew they were rich because they were Jewish, and raped a 19-year-old woman in the apartment. It is becoming increasingly common for French Jews living in neighborhoods in proximity to Muslim areas to remove mazazot from their doors. Hungary, the Jobbik Party, the third largest party in Hungary, lists anti-Zionism as one of its core values and calls on the Hungarian government to draw up a list of Jews in Hungary who might constitute a national security risk. In Erpetek, the mayor hung the Israeli prime minister in effigy and announced that he opposes the efforts of Freemason Jews to rule the world. Turkey. Turkey's Islamist president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, has routinely compared Israel to the Nazis or worse. For example, those who condemn Hitler day and night have surpassed Hitler in barbarism. India. To draw but one example from outside of Europe, in November 2008, Rabbi Gavriel and Rivka Holtzberg, the couple who ran the Rabad house in Mumbai, were murdered, along with 4 other Jews, by Muslim terrorists from Pakistan. Incidents directed at individual Jews are also becoming more common at some of the most prestigious American universities. At Stanford University, a Jewish woman running in a student government election solicited the support of representatives of the Students of Color Coalition. She was asked, "Given your Jewish identity, how would you vote on divestment from Israel?" A question irrelevant to a student government election, but very relevant to those whose goal it is to marginalize Jewish students on campus. A friend whose son was applying to college was warned by his college admissions advisor to remove mention of the Labour Zionist camp he had attended. As the advisor told him, it is not going to help you to have the word Zionist on your application. It is very unlikely that the advisor would have similarly advised a student, not to mention that he or she was involved in pro-BDS activities. The most widespread expression of Israel hatred is the BDS, Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions movement, which is devoted to forging an economic, academic and cultural boycott of Israel. Some BDS supporters, including many of its Jewish supporters, naively believe that BDS is opposed to Israel only because of its control over the West Bank, an opposition that will end when a Palestinian state is in existence. But the movement's leadership has repeatedly made it clear that BDS's goal is to maintain a complete boycott of Israel and, in the words of Omar Barghouti, the movement's founder, to end Israel's existence as a Jewish state. Given the long and universal history of anti-Semitism, Jews have accepted that a certain level of anti-Semitism will exist even in a generally friendly society. How then can one assess whether anti-Semitism is reaching a dangerous level? A key test is this. When a person is exposed as an anti-Semite, does it raise or lower that person's status in society? In the mid-1980s, it was revealed that the black activist Jesse Jackson, who was then pursuing the Democratic nomination for president, had made some anti-Semitic remarks to a black journalist. Jackson felt the need to go to a synagogue and apologize for his comments. A few years later, Patrick Buchanan, a leading conservative figure in the Republican Party, made anti-Semitic remarks and, when called on them, refused to apologize. Buchanan was subsequently marginalized. As long as being exposed as an anti-Semite injures one's status in American society, America will remain a country in which Jews continue to prosper. However, if being exposed as one who works to harm Israel, let alone aids those who seek to destroy it or to otherwise harm the Jewish people, does not lower the regard in which that individual is held, the Jewish community will be in trouble. Jews die at the hands of those who will murder countless others in addition to the Jews. Therefore, moral non-Jews who do not confront anti-Semites are doomed to be their victims. Anti-Semites start with Jews but never end with them. Had the world confronted Hitler and the Nazis over their anti-Semitism in the 1930s, not only the 6 million Jews would have been saved, but an additional 55 million people who were killed in World War II. So too, the world essentially ignored Palestinian Muslim terror. No Palestinian Christians were suicide bombers against the Israelis. And now far more non-Jews and even Muslims have been slaughtered by Islamist terror groups. Indeed, today it is Christians who are the most persecuted minority throughout the Middle East and much of Africa, a fact generally ignored by the media. Those who want Israel destroyed and who send young people to blow themselves up in order to murder as many Jews as possible are humanity's problem as much as the Jews' problem. For to understand anti-Semitism is to understand the role of this tiny people as the lightning rod for evil in every culture in which they have lived.